I built this up in stages so that I could show you in stages. I have a silly console program just to get it started. And then I created a form program that uses the same stuff, but it's a form, it's not an ASPX, but they're all the same. So let's start with a simple program. Now I assume you know that, let's see, is this one? Yeah. If you right click on this Mongo simple and say set as startup project, then it'll run that project, and it won't try to run the forms project. Later on, when we're done playing with this one, we'll right click that project and say run that one, and then we'll run the forms project. Okay. So I'll just run it. Don't run yours yet. So I have 3 pieces of data up on Mongo right now. You don't have any data, but you will in a minute, okay? And what I have is like hurt someplace, from form, new place, back to main. I don't know. These are 3 notes that I made to myself. And all I'm displaying is the data. I think it maybe has a timestamp. So let's look at this silly little program. And again, the main goal here of this whole course is to get you to think about all the different ways we read and write data. Okay. So this is that same article that I just mentioned. It shows you how to do this with a web API, an ASP web API project, which you'll have to suffer with me in the fall of 22. But it had the good information that I need. Okay. So I create a class to access my Mongo data. And it's called Mongo Access. We'll look at it later. So I instantiate it. So I have a bunch of methods to read and write my Mongo data. Okay. Now I'm going to create an object which is my contact, okay? And the definition of my contact is this file here. And this file says, this is a definition of an object, just like anything else. It's got a bunch of get set properties. It's got an ID, a name, an address, an email, and a phone. And then it has something that says boson ID. Now, are you familiar with this? I always want to call them annotations, but they're not annotations. They're called attributes. Okay. There are a zillion attributes floating around in this language. And that little thing in square brackets is like a modifier. This says, I want ice cream, and that says chocolate ice cream, okay? It's a modifier. It is a note to the compiler that when it's processing this, I want that to be a certain way. And this, you're familiar with XML, and you're probably familiar with JSON. There's another flavor of it called JSON or DSON or something like that. Okay. It is the exchange format that goes back and forth with MongoDB. They don't use JSON, they use this other thing. And it's defined because we installed the Mongo driver. When we downloaded the Mongo driver, it brought in a class definition for this attribute called boson ID. And what it does is it adds extra information to that so that it will literally act like a gateway. We will treat it like a simple string ID, but when it gets transmitted through the driver will convert it into this other format that Mongo wants. So that's why that's there, okay? So this is our taxi cab. This is our data bucket. This is my UPS truck for sending information up to Mongo, getting information back. And then I treat it like C# data. And Mongo treats it like it's funny Buffalo data. Or Bison, as the case may be. Okay, so now back to my program. in order to test this out, I wanted to try to write one record in the cloud, okay? So I create one of these objects, these content objects, and I load it up. You should write something interesting here, like your name, and I have 3 records up there, so I'm going to change mine to 4. You make yours say 1, so you keep them straight, but they're not important. It's just 4 pieces of data. They're all strings. They can be whatever you want. But we're making a list of contacts, name, address, phone, all right? Now, I have this commented out because I didn't want to keep doing this over and over again. But if you uncomment it, we're going to call a method in that class called Mongo Access, create a contact. That's the method, and we're going to pass in one of these contacts. And hopefully, it'll write it. Okay. Then, the next line of code creates a list of type contact. And now I'm going to call Mongo Access get all contacts, and it's going to return a list of contacts. It's going to read the BISON data, put it into objects of contact, and put them in a list. And then I go through with the for each list and I write them out. Okay? That's all there is to the code. So create an object, hand it to the database method, and then ask it for a list back. So I hope you understand that simple C# console code. So now the interesting part is Mongo Access. And frankly, I don't understand all this code in here either. I cut and pasted from that article. Pretty much. I had to change a fair amount, but pretty much. Anyhow, I declare something called a Mongo database. Okay? Now, how can I declare that? It's because I did that NuGet, and I brought down all this Mongo information. It's now a bunch of C# libraries that are available to me. In that library was a definition of a Mongo database object, which and it brings its methods that I can use for reading and writing. Okay? So I instantiate a local, well, I'm actually not instantiating it. I'm creating a variable of type Mongo database. Okay? Now, I have 2 methods here, one to read and one to write. Here's my create contact, okay? Remember, I passed in a contact object all loaded up with a name and address and all that stuff. So then this method on that object that was given to me, it says retrieve Mongo database, okay? I didn't make this up. This is what you have to do. You know, it's just like using SQL and you have to say SQL command equal. Same, it's a protocol or ritual, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and then, to the best I can tell, and maybe you know more than I do because you've taken Charlie's classes, if I want to add another record to Mongo, I can't just send up another record to Mongo. I have to pull the whole collection down, put it in, and then send the whole collection back up again. That seems to be the way it works. Because what I'm going to do here is, I create a contact list, and I said var because I have no idea what it's going to be. And then I make a call, Mongo database get collection. This is that name that I created. Remember 2 minutes ago when we were on the Mongo site, I told you to create a new collection. Your collection is empty, but it exists. So this says get the collection. I could change that and read any other collection I had. I had 4 of them up there. I had one for orders and another one for presidents or something left over from Charlie. Okay, and then I have write concern result. Have no idea what that means. And then I ask, is the string null or empty? Which says, I think, did I get anything back? And then if it's empty, I create a new ID. And that's because Mongo, you know how databases create their own IDs. So we're creating the ID here, but we're using a supplied Mongo method that will actually create that string for us.
I thought Mongo, if you can name collection and don't try and read it and just start pushing, you can just push stuff without actually having to cover the data already.
Without reading it down?
Yeah, if you're just pushing data up and not trying to read it, you shouldn't have to pull the data down.
You may be right. You may
If
be
you're trying to
right.
read it and pull, if you are trying to read it, you need to pull it down. But
Right.
short of that, you can just, you're just pushing, like pushing in logging
Yeah.
files. You
Yeah,
don't
I
need
think
to
you're
pull it
right,
down.
because I have another program that does that. I think this one's getting set up so that we could modify records. too.
Yeah, but if you're modifying data, you can pull it down, but if you're not modifying, you can just keep pushing. Because it's just essentially rows. That's all you're pushing out.
So then, this is magic Mongo code that I copied from that web article, which basically defines a Mongo query, just like we would define a SQL select command or something. Only we're in effect doing an insert. So we're calling the query dot, I have no idea what EQ stands for, but it says create a new contact. We're setting the primary key there. And then it says Mongo update, 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 and then we're gonna say set. And this is the name in the Mongo database, and this, remember that data, that taxi cab I passed in, these are the values I passed in. So I'm setting them in this new record that I'm creating in Mongo. And then it says resolve equal contact list dot update. All right, so this is where you actually do the update command. It runs that query, it updates it, presumably this result probably comes back like a number of how many records were added or something, I don't know. This line was in the code I copied. I haven't figured out what it does yet, so I commented it out.
It's your try-catch, essentially.
Oh, that's,
Returns
that's,
try-catch.
oh, that's a fancy try-catch. Has the
Well, it just returns from the database. If you have an error in the database message, I think that is the, I think that's, I think that's the
Oh,
database
so
contact.
I could read this. If Mongo gave me an error, I could read that and see what it was.
Most likely, I bet
Yeah.
that's what it is. I think
Yeah, that's a good guess. I'll play around with that later.
The line that you were talking about earlier, right, concern result?
Yeah.
Result, it's a data type, it looks like, and you're just declaring a variable of result. And that's where you're storing the result when you get all done.
So that's not much code to update the database. Not so bad. And then to read it, I do the same thing. I do Mongo database. I get the database, I create a list, and then I find all, and then for each one that's in the list, I create a new contact. And this is my object now, my contact object, and I'm loading up its properties with the values that were there. And then when I'm done, I turn it all into a list and I return it. And now I have a list of all the data that's up there. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let's back up. Whether I need it or not, in both of these methods, I asked to get the list, okay? I got the list and then added one and then pushed it back up. Or when I want to display the list. So this is a worker method that I call from both methods. Sorry. So if you go back up here where it says,
Yeah.
Well, maybe I don't use it up here. Maybe I only use it down here. Oh, okay, no, I'm wrong. I was wrong that I was wrong. Okay, this method is happy, it's just as I described it. This is the other method, get all contacts, I get the database. The common one is this one where I retrieve the database. This is the common one that I use. So whether I'm reading the list to add one, or I'm reading the list just to get the list and returning the list, in both cases, I have this method where I say retrieve Mongo database. That is my own method. That one didn't count. And what do I do to retrieve it? Well, I create a new Mongo client. I give it what we would call a connection string. They call it a Mongo URL. This is where I paste it in. It's definitely MongoDB. It's whatever your username is, colon, whatever your password is, and then the unique machine number, that unique number, which is port number, and then the name of the database is at the end there. So this is that string that I told you to save. And then, now that you have a client, you make a call on the server. You say Mongo client.getServer, and now you have this. And then you say return Mongo client getServer, get database, boom. That's the code that, all that other code is happening locally. This is the code that's called from each of them, where it actually goes up and pulls the data back down. Okay, so for you to get your program working right now, all you should have to do would be change the name of this database and then change this connection string. And that should be it, I believe.
The .eq.
Let me just check up here to see who I use. Well, as long as you use the same collection name that I did, which was called contact list, then the only code you have to change to get this program working with your code is this code here. Let me move this over so it all fits. And then it fits. Whoops. Now, what were you asking me about?
No, I was just telling you the .eq stands for equals to. So the query .eq parentheses is saying get anything that equals these parameters.
Oh, it's a selection criteria then. Okay. So you should be typing MongoDB / the name of your user, colon, the name of your password, and then the rest of this connection string should have come from when you saved it. And then change the name of the database here and here to match whatever you called your database. And then if you run it, it should run, it should create a new record, and then it should our main method calls get the collection, and it should print out the first record you just put up there. Good? We got one success. All right, 2 successes? Okay. So then, if you want to be really cool, you can go back to the program, and you can change this and change the data a little bit. And if you run it again, then you should have 2 records coming back. Why am I only showing person, place, from, form, place?
Might be the table that you're looking at.
Huh?
Might be did you execute the insert already?
Oh, I know what it is. It's my for loop. My for loop is only writing out 2 values. I chose only to write out the name and address. I didn't choose to write out all 4 values. Yeah. So I can make this.
To the API graph, to grab the Mongo, you have to do that, or is it already there?
You need to do that NuGet command. Oh, you probably don't. No, you don't in this project. No. It's already there because I ran it and you're running a copy of mine. But when you modify your homework, you'll have to do it there.
Notice some of the lines are, Mongo client seems to be deprecated.
Yeah. From the article I used, it's telling me there's a new. Okay, hold on. You might start looking at the forms version of this while I answer John's question.
Do we add more records?
No, it was empty and it wouldn't let me add it, so. Create document, what is the format?
The generate resource tax.
I don't know what the format is.
I got the same error.
What's yours?
The generate resource task. Yeah,
So
unexpected.
that's fine, certainly not in there. Go to, yeah, that's the one I want to look at. Something's not good here. Oh, I need to change this. Yeah, did you not change that?
Did you plug in your username and password?